The Rag Audibles Podcast, brought to you by Pawpaws Campers and Cars, is getting ready for the only top 10 matchup of Labor Day weekend, and that's LSU versus Florida State. I'm your host, Pierson Luscy, and Category 4 Hurricane Idalia is making its way through northern Florida, and the state is forecasted to get 3 to 8 inches of rain. But it's not expected to impact the LSU versus Florida State game. And according to the voice of Florida State football, Jeff Culhane, he says that FSU's preparation and travel to get there are not expected to be affected. So we're getting ready for, once again, the only top 10 matchup that's happening this Sunday. We're now less than 4 days away from kickoff between the two. So we're going to have Coach Brian Kelly's SEC call that he did earlier on Wednesday, along with Louisiana Radio Network's Jeff Palermo and Todd Horne's interview with Caroline Fenton of the Locked On LSU podcast. We have predictions flowing in across the country for the game, and in fact, the Associated Press just now released their prediction, and they have Florida State 28 and LSU 24. So Tiger Rag editor Todd Horne and I will have our own predictions later on. Stay tuned for more, but first we have a word from our sponsor, and that is Pawpaws Campers and Cars. They have a great website if you want to check out at pawpawsrvs.com. It's easy to use. They have a click on for a drop-down menu. You can refine your search for all your RV needs. And if you're looking for something more compact, they have cars you can rent. As always, their number is 1-800-728-3367, and that's 1-800-728-3367. Don't forget, that's a good RV, Pawpaw.
Hey neighbors, we're not that far from where you are. Make that short drive to Pawpaw's Campers in Picayune and see our Wildwood, Catalina, Sportsman, and Zinger trailer lines and our Rockwood and Heritage Glen fifth wheel lines. From Houma to Hammond, Biloxi to Jackson, and Mobile and Pensacola, we're not that far from where you are. Come and see us.
You're gonna love the way we deal. Pawpaw's Campers City and Picayune. You're gonna love the way we deal.
Welcome back to the Rag Audibles Podcast, and without further ado, we have Brian Kelly's full interview from the SEC Media Day on Wednesday.
Well, thank you. Good to be back here and talking about college football. So many other things going on in the world today, so nice to have this brief respite to talk about a game. And you know, the game is an exciting one. You know, you got two nationally ranked football teams, and as you know, we played to a close 1 point game last year, decided by a blocked extra point. So we know what's in store for us. It's an outstanding football team. Mike Norvell's done a great job in building this program back to, elite status. Our guys have recognized that in terms of how they've prepared. And I think we're at that point, like most teams, excited about the opportunity to go out and play. We're going to finish our preparation this week. We're hoping, pray that everybody is safe from the storm. Don't expect any ramifications from that. It looks like things will clear out in time for the game on Sunday. From our standpoint, it's really just focusing on in our process and what we do in terms of our preparation, and then go play a game that a lot of people want to see on Sunday. It'll be the only game on TV, so that has this kind of matchup with two top 10 teams. So pretty excited to get the season started.
For questions, press 10, and we'll begin with Wilson Alexander, the Advocate.
Hey, Brian, good morning.
Good morning, Wilson.
You talked earlier this offseason about a comprehensive plan for Jaden when he came back. Based on what you've seen so far, how effective do you think that has been?
Well, the preparation part has been very effective. Look, we haven't gotten into the performance part yet, so that's where a lot of this guys, we start to answer a lot of these questions when it comes to performance. But in terms of this preparation, both on and off the field, I think it's exactly where we wanted it to be. We've seen his growth off the field in terms of his, work in the community, his ability to lead. He's been named captain. He's developed in a manner that when you see his work in practice, you see a more complete quarterback. And those are the things that we're, mapping out. He's stronger physically. He's put on the right weight. He's healthy in all of those areas. Now it's about flipping that switch and going from all this preparation to performance. And my experience tells me if you've prepared the right way in all of those facets, the performance kind of takes care of itself. So now it's just a matter of, waiting for that opportunity and then taking advantage of it.
And then Logan Diggs has, of course, been limited for part of this preseason, but now that he's back and practicing again, just sort of what have you been able to see out of what he brings to your team?
Well, he's a back that has all of the tools. He has the ability to see it, hit it explosively as a runner, catches the ball extremely well out of the backfield, has great knowledge in terms of pass protection, and he has experience. Played a lot of football at a Power 5 school, a team that played, at the highest level. So he brings a lot of those, experience pieces as well as development pieces in terms of the complete back. He adds to, an experienced group with Kane and Williams. That's pretty good. Add John Emery when he's able to come back, and now you've got a deep and talented, experienced group of running backs. Anytime you have that in the SEC, you feel pretty good about it.
Again, for questions for Coach, press 10, and we'll continue with Steve Moulton at WZZN.
Hey, Coach, good morning. Hope you're doing well, sir.
Thank you, Steve.
I wanted to ask about Jordan Travis and what kind of challenges does he present to your defense, Coach?
Well, I think it's well chronicled what he's done. I mean, I faced him, let's see, 1, 2, 3. This will be 4 times now. So I know him quite well. First of all, he's a great competitor. I think a lot of times we talk about skill set. We forget about how great of a competitor he is. Refuses to lose, has that fire. He's always going to be in the mix, regardless of the situation. He competes every single snap. I love that about him, his makeup. I think the other thing is, his ability to, push the ball down the field. He throws a great long ball, and with the receivers that he has, it's a great fit. So the ability to push the ball and throw the ball down the field, makes him a great fit for the offense that they run, and his ability to extend plays, his athleticism. You look at the run last year against Florida where, they've got him in the backfield, his ability to escape and extend play. So, all of those things together, make him the kind of player that he is, and he's a winner. I think that to me tops it all off, his competitiveness and that he's a winner.
And Coach, I heard you earlier this week talk about the offensive line, and I just it felt like you're just more comfortable with your team this year compared to last year. So I maybe you tell me if I'm reading that wrong, but how does this team compare this year going into your second year compared to the question marks you had going into last year, Coach?
Well, I think it's just that. I mean, there were just so many more question marks. Now, they answered some of those question marks in the way they played, and, they had a personality of their own. They were a competitive group, and they fought hard, and they overcame a lot of the sloppiness, and we did that against Florida State. As you know, we put the ball on the ground a couple of times in special teams and, had some bad snaps, and they overcame it. That was their demeanor last year. That was their DNA, I guess I would say. So they answered a lot of those question marks. I think we go into this season with less question marks, but we still have to develop an identity of this team. And that's why, you got to go out and play before you really get a sense of what your football team's about.
Thank you, Coach.
Sir.
Next, we'll go to Scott Ravelay, the Baton Rouge Advocate.
Hey, Brian. Good morning. Real quick, I have a main question, but to quickly follow up, you mentioned John Emery. What would you say his status is for the game?
Unavailable.
Okay. And secondly, in the time that you've been here recruiting, and going around and talking to coaches and high school people, what has been your impression of the brand, the reach that LSU has? Is it what you expected? Has it been different in any way?
Well, I think it's the flagship school of the state. I think it clearly has a strong foothold, but you still have to be able to, promote what this program is about, what it stands for, the academic mission, and so you can't just say, well, I'm from Louisiana and you're coming to LSU, because it works on both ends. We're going to recruit the very best student athletes in the state. They don't all fit here. Let's make sure that we understand that. Not everybody fits, the mission that we have here, in this program. And that's important to recognize. And on the other hand, we've got to make sure that when there are those student athletes out there that do fit, we recruit the heck out of them and not assume that they're coming to LSU just because we're the flagship school. So, it works both ways from that perspective. And I think, we definitely have, a slant in our favor, but you got to work at it. And you got to make sure that you're not taking players just because they're from Louisiana. They still have to fit the mission that you have here.
Coach, we'll finish you up with Koki Riley of the Daily Advertiser.
Hey, Coach. Good morning.
Good morning.
When it comes to a guy like Johnny Wilson, 6'7" wide receiver, what are sort of the keys, and what are you sort of teaching your guys to sort of combat a guy with that sort of size and length?
Yeah, certainly, any ball that's thrown up there, you'd like it to be 50-50. The thing with Wilson is that he turns it into 75-25. And so, competing for the football in the air is going to be paramount to our success. We got to make him 50-50. And to do that, we've got to be on body. We've got to be able to disrupt him off the line of scrimmage so the timing is a little bit off in terms of some of those throws. If he gets clean releases down the field and they're easy throws to them, he's going to make them. And Jordan's going to get the ball to him. So you've got to make it harder in terms of disrupting timing. You've got to be on body. You've got to compete for the catches every single time, to try to get it even. And then that's a task in itself. Because when you are 6'7" and you have the kind of talent he has, when he is targeted, it's certainly a challenge.
Coach, thank you, and good luck on Sunday.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Don't believe it. LSU just confirmed that they will be without John Emery Jr., their running back, for Sunday's opener against Florida State. And this is the first that we've heard of this news, but if you want more information on what does come out, we have more at tigerrag.com. And he was one of the numerous running backs that LSU had in their room, but now they will be without one of their playmakers. We're going to turn to the interview between Jeff Palermo and Todd Horne with Caroline Fenton of the Locked On LSU podcast.
Louisiana Farm Bureau. This is Tiger Rag Radio.
And we're off to hour number 2 of Tiger Rag Radio. I'm Jeff Palermo, News and Sports Director of the Louisiana Radio Network. Tiger Rag editor Todd Horne with me inside the studios, along with Jackson Blackman, our producer. We are so glad you could be a part of the show here tonight as we get you ready for LSU Florida State on Sunday night in Orlando. 6:30 kickoff for the Tigers and the Seminoles. Coming up a little bit later on, we'll take a look at what else is happening around the Southeastern Conference with Lynn Scarborough of Lindy Sports Magazines. But first, let's break down more of the LSU Tigers and where they stand. Caroline Fenton, the host of the Locked On LSU podcast. You can get that wherever you get all your podcasts. She joins us now here on Tiger Rag Radio. How you doing tonight, Caroline?
It's week 1. We've got LSU Tigers football this week, so I'm doing just about as good as I can possibly be. Pumped for Sunday night in Orlando.
Yeah, I'm pretty excited about it too. How excited though are you about LSU's defensive secondary? That's obviously the big question mark, right? What are we doing? What is LSU doing with the cornerback position specifically? How do you see this being broken down, and your thoughts on the fact that maybe even Sage Ryan might be starting at one of the corner spots, a guy that's played primarily safety and nickelback here at LSU?
Yeah, it's absolutely a concern, and the closer we get to game time, the more nervous I get about this position group. But frankly, it's something that I've been concerned about really all off season long. The second year in a row, Brian Kelly, defensive coordinator Matt House, are forced to go back into the portal and basically rebuild this cornerback room from the ground up, with the exception of LaTerrence Welch. And when we heard Brian Kelly talk about Sage Ryan taking snaps at corner, he framed it like, yeah, he's quick, he's fast, he can tackle in spaces, he's versatile, he's flexible, and all of those are really great things and wonderful testaments to Sage Ryan and his ability. But I looked at it like, it's wonderful that he can do all of those things, but you're also in a place where he has to do those things, where a career safety and nickel has to take snaps at corner. So the depth at cornerback absolutely is a concern of mine, not just against Florida State, but really throughout the entirety of the season. But I know that this Florida State offense is going to want to throw the ball all around the yard. So that just places even more pressure on the defensive line to get pressure on the quarterback, so that the secondary isn't forced to have to keep up with Florida State's wide receiver core that is full of quick and really big guys. So it's going to be a challenge for the defensive line to get to Jordan Travis. I just hope that they can do their job so the secondary isn't forced to kind of pick up the pieces in the backfield.
Do you, Caroline, this is Todd. Basically, I think everybody has been, like you said, concerned about the secondary, but are you not buying that Sage Ryan is a potential starting quarterback, or are you just saying he wouldn't even be in that situation if LSU didn't have depth issues?
I'm saying that he can play corner, and I don't think they would put him in that position if that wasn't in his wheelhouse, and that he has the ability to do it. He has the speed to do it. I'm just saying it's an uncomfortable position for me that a guy who has only played safety and nickel will be put in that position where he has to do it. I have all the confidence and faith in the world that if this coaching staff is going to put Sage Ryan in that position, that he can do it. It's just more so a testament to the depth of the cornerback room more than it is Sage Ryan's ability.
So are you buying that Florida State has a great receiver core, really? I mean, because they have Johnny Wilson at 6'7". He's the only player who's caught more than 100 yards worth of receiving yards in college football that I understand correctly. And the rest of them have virtually no starts, certainly not at Florida State.
I am buying into it. And until I see anything different from Florida State, I think that that's going to be how I feel. And I think it more so lies in the quarterback position. Jordan Travis, I think he proved that he is one of the best quarterbacks in college football this past season. Now, he's not Bryce Young. Now, he's not Caleb Williams. He is not necessarily in that wheelhouse. But Jordan Travis can beat you in an arms match if and when he needs to do that. And he can get enough from his receivers to really help him in the passing game. And I think that Florida State also has one of the top offensive line units in the country, so they're going to help out that passing attack as well. So I am absolutely buying into this Florida State wide receiver core. But if we can see anything different on Sunday and throughout the rest of the season, then I'll change my mind, absolutely.
Yeah, no, and I'm not doubting. I'm just, I think it's always a big thing. I think LSU has a big advantage, certainly on the offensive side of the ball, even though Florida State is extremely talented, because LSU knows each other. They've played together for the most part. They know the system. They're bringing, they're returning 6 starters on offense from last year. And like I said, Johnny Wilson's the only returning receiver. So they're going to have to prove to me that they're connected for this first game. I'm not saying they're not going to have a great year, but I think that is an advantage for LSU going into the first game. I could be completely wrong, though, but we'll see.
I know it absolutely is an advantage for LSU going into this season, but Florida State also returns a lot of production. Looking at the ESPN FPI, which is, a large analytic and metric that they use that includes returning production. So not necessarily returning starters, but returning production. Returning your starting quarterback obviously gives you more returning production than maybe a fourth string wide receiver. Florida State returns more production than any other team in college football. So while I think it absolutely is an advantage for LSU that they're starting, 3, 4, 5 steps, 10, 15 steps ahead of where they were this time last year, I think Florida State is also in a similar position.
So talk to me about Mason Smith and him having to miss this game and your thoughts on that.
I think it's a really frustrating move by the NCAA. The NCAA likes to pride itself on being an organization that helps student athletes. However, I don't think that's what they have done, and I think that this is just another example that they're really there just for petty, discipline more so than adding value into the lives of student athletes. If we can even really use that term in the NIL era, that's frustrating. In terms of the on-the-field perspective of things, this is just going to be the next man up. Can Jacoby and Guillory step up like Mekhi Wingo did when Mason Smith went down with a torn ACL against Florida State last year? We'll see. I think the one thing that gives me a little bit of optimism here is, and when I say this, I don't mean any disrespect to Mason Smith whatsoever. He's a first-round draft pick. He's going to be one of the top defensive players in all of college football this year. You don't lose him and get better. You don't lose him and feel good about it. But also, LSU was able to win 10 games this past season without Mason Smith. I think the rest of this defensive line can at least pull up, the rest of the load without him this week 1. And then week 2, you're that much better with Mason Smith. So it's a bummer. It's sad, and it sucks for Mason Smith. Rules are rules. Unfortunately, the NCAA is going to NCAA, but I still have faith in this defensive front.
Does it help you sleep at night whenever you think about the fact that Florida State had to rely on 2 blocked field goals or extra points last year, as well as 2 fumbled punts, and there was no Harold Perkins on the field last year, and there will be this year? Does that help you sleep at night?
Oh my goodness, absolutely. And that is part of the reason why I give LSU a bit of the edge and a little bit of the nod going into this game, is because looking at the matchup last season, and I totally understand that these are two very different teams, both Florida State and LSU, now than when they played last year. But last year, LSU lost that game more so than Florida State won that game. 2 muffed punts, like you mentioned, 2 blocked kicks, and just sloppy penalties. And the offensive line didn't protect Jaden Daniels very well. Jaden Daniels didn't utilize the passing game very well. I mean, LSU just made sloppy mistakes. Florida State was able to benefit off of that. And I think the second part of that as well that makes me feel confident about this LSU team going up against Florida State is last year LSU had much more impressive wins on their schedule. Florida State finished with an impressive win total, but Florida State lost to every single ranked opponent on their schedule last season. LSU was able to take down Alabama, and who I thought was the best quarterback in all of college football. They took down an undefeated Ole Miss team. They just are more battle-tested going into this season than Florida State is. So I give the edge to LSU for those reasons.
True or false? LSU is the best team Florida State will play this year?
True. I don't even have to hesitate. I think that absolutely is true. I don't believe in Clemson this season. I think that they can be a solid team. I think that's a Clemson team that could win the ACC, but I also am not very impressed by the ACC this season. So I say absolutely 100%. This is the toughest test on Florida State's schedule. On the LSU side of things, this is the toughest test for LSU right now. And then you've got another really tough test staring you down on an SEC West schedule for the rest of the way. So 100% absolutely, this is the hardest game on Florida State's schedule.
Okay, true or false? Jaden Daniels is a much improved passing quarterback than he was last year.
100% true. We saw, it was not linear improvement week over week, but we saw a different Jaden Daniels, let's say, against Purdue in the Citrus Bowl. We saw a different Jaden Daniels against Alabama and Ole Miss and Florida State than we saw against Mississippi State or Florida State or some of the games earlier on LSU's schedule last year. So we saw progress week over week from Jaden Daniels last season. Well, now he's had an entire off season to refine his game, to work on the passing game, to maybe not rely so much on his legs and allow himself a little bit more patience. So totally, I think we see a much improved passing Jaden Daniels while still using his legs to his advantage.
True or false? Malik Neighbors is going to have the best season of an LSU receiver in a long time.
Oh, that's hard to say. I don't know if I can say that Malik Neighbors is going to have a better season than maybe Justin Jefferson or Jamar Chase in 2019. But I think that since 2019, Malik Neighbors will have the best season of an LSU wide receiver. I think we've just seen too many good things from Malik Neighbors last year. And then we heard Brian Kelly talk about how he's worked on himself off the field, and that's translated to being on the field. So I think we see an even better Malik Neighbors this year than we did see last year.
Caroline, let's just say, for argument's sake, Malik Neighbors is your leading receiver. Who's the second leading receiver on this team?
Is it crazy if I say Mason Taylor?
That's who I'm going to say. I know, it's not crazy at all.
I mean, it's no disrespect to Brian Thomas or Kyron Lacey or Aaron Anderson or any other member of this wide receiving core. I think we've just seen a peek of what's to come. You know, we saw it last year that Jaden Daniels' two favorite targets, Malik Neighbors, Mason Taylor. We saw it in the scrimmage. His favorite targets, Malik Neighbors, Mason Taylor. I don't think that's going to change too much moving forward, but I do think that it's important that Jaden Daniels starts to build more rapport and starts to build that trust with the Brian Thomas, with the Kyron Lacey, with the Landon Ibieta, to ensure that, you know, when, not if, but when Malik Neighbors gets doubled, he's got other trustworthy targets to throw to. But yeah, I say Mason Taylor.
Do you think that Florida State's defense can hold LSU's offense below 30 points?
That's a really good question. I look at Jared Verse on the Florida State defensive line, and I mean, he's a dude. One shy of double-digit sack season this past year. I think that's one guy. You know, how we feel so confident about Harold Perkins and Mason Smith coming back this season. That's that guy for Florida State on the defensive side of the ball. He's going to be the guy that you're going to have to look out for. I think that if – I'm going to say no. I'm going to say that LSU scores more than 30 points.
Do you think that LSU's Aaron Anderson will play a big factor in the special teams game for LSU?
He's going to have to. That's what he was brought in here to do, and also to play a role in the wide receiver room as well. But you look at the special teams issues this team had last year, they bring in Aaron Anderson to try and remedy some of those things. So, yeah, he's going to have to.
Caroline, could you hold on for another segment here?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, more of Caroline Fenton when we come back here on Tiger Rag Radio. All right, wrapping it up here with Caroline Fenton, host of Locked On LSU Podcast. Jeff Palermo along with Todd Horne, the editor for Tiger Rag Magazine. One of the things that, Caroline, one of the things that Coach Kelly was talking about on Monday was special teams. Aaron Anderson returning punts. Damian Ramos apparently has done very well as the field goal kicker. I mean, Coach Kelly said he's been outstanding during camp, so that's good. But he knows just how he probably felt okay about special teams last year, at least the return guys, and then it just totally blew up in his face. But he's hoping it's a much different picture this season.
Yeah, you know, I think
Go ahead, Caroline. Sorry.
Yeah, no, all good. I think I have to give Brian Kelly credit for acknowledging how much of a weakness special teams was for this team last year. You know, moving on from Brian Polian, addressing punt returner and kick returner in the transfer portal, just making necessary changes. And if those changes seem to be, you know, beneficial changes, then wonderful. And if they don't seem to be beneficial changes, then we need to start asking ourselves very serious questions about where these problems are coming from. I look at special teams like they're gimmies. You know, they float them up there and you can take them or not. And LSU left too many missed special teams opportunities on the field last year, not just against Florida State. I mean, remember, you know, must opening kickoff against Tennessee. Let's not forget that touchdown return after a missed field goal against Georgia. I mean, just so many miscues on special teams starting from week one all the way through the SEC championship. So I at least hope that special teams is much improved because they've addressed the things to make those special teams improved. But I think that this game, Florida State LSU, is such an evenly matched game going into week one of what we know about these two teams that it very simply could come down to which team makes fewer mistakes. That's what happened last year. LSU shot themselves in the foot on special teams and basically handed Florida State a win. You eliminate those mistakes, LSU wins that game last year. I wouldn't be surprised to see this upcoming game, be the same situation.
Are you looking forward to seeing Harold Perkins play inside and adding that to his repertoire, which we didn't see last year that much?
I will tell you what, I'm excited to see Harold Perkins no matter where he is. Inside, outside, playing safety, playing quarterback, whatever he might do. I'm always excited to watch Harold Perkins to see what he can do. And, let's go back a few months when Brian Kelly and John Jancic and Matt House were talking about how they wanted Harold Perkins to play linebacker, that they were going to put him at will linebacker on the weak side and the inside linebacker. I think that left a lot of LSU fans kind of unsettled. It left a lot of LSU fans thinking, Harold Perkins was so great in his position where he was. If it's not broke, don't fix it. And that's a very fair concern. But Brian Kelly, I think, clarified those comments, this past week when he said, you're not just going to see Harold Perkins line up on the inside in the same place every single play. You're going to force offenses to try and identify where Harold Perkins is. So if we saw how dominant and how much of a game changer Harold Perkins was last year as a true freshman, with maybe a role that wasn't as clearly identified, with maybe a more surface level understanding of the defense and of his expectations, I'm excited to see what Harold Perkins can do with an even deeper understanding of the defense and of his expectations, and with a more clear and defined role. I'm just always excited to see what Harold Perkins can do, especially considering he was on the sidelines for basically the entirety of the Florida State game this past season.
That's right. So, last question from me. Let's say it's a good game for LSU. Things are going well. There's no problems offensively. Jaden Daniels is performing like we know he can and what we're expecting him to do. Does LSU put a package together and put Garrett Nussmeier in at least once in the first half and at least once in the second half?
I don't think so. I really don't. And that's no disrespect to Garrett Nussmeier. It's just, I look at it like this game is so incredibly important. I mean, there's college football playoff implications on this game week one. I don't think that you want to try and jinx anything or change anything or try and get cute with it by switching up the quarterback position. I think that you have to go into this game, do what you need to do. But if you go up early, if you have a lead, go into it conservatively and do whatever you can to retain that lead. And it's not that Garrett Nussmeier will, hurt that lead. It's not that Garrett Nussmeier is going to hurt this team's chances at a win. I just don't think that you try and get too cute with it. I do expect to see packages of Garrett Nussmeier throughout the season. This game, I don't expect that to happen.
Caroline, give us a final record. What's your prediction?
Final record or final score?
Final record.
Final record, I'm going to go 11-1.
Okay.
Which might sound lofty. I think LSU wins this game by a very slim margin. I wouldn't be surprised to see it be a 2 or 3 point game. Vegas kind of, I think, hit it right on the money with a 2.5 point spread. But I think that gives LSU a little bit of leeway throughout the season. Maybe that's a drop, against Alabama. Maybe that's a weird slip-up game against a Texas A&M team that I think is going to be much improved this season. But I think 11-1 absolutely is in the realm of possibility.
Caroline, thanks for your help. We really appreciate it. Good stuff as always. Look forward to listening every day on Locked On LSU Podcast. Thanks a lot for your time.
All right, appreciate y'all. Enjoy the game this Sunday.
We certainly will. That's Caroline Fenton from the host, again, of Locked On LSU Podcast. I'm Jeff Palermo along with Todd Horne. We got to take another break here. When we come back, we'll talk SEC football with Lynn Scarborough from Lindy's Magazine. So stay tuned for that here on Tiger Rag Radio.
Back here with Tiger Rag editor Todd Horne. We're going over predictions for the game because AP had their own. What do you think going into the game? What is yours?
Well, I totally disagree with the Associated Press, but I'd like to point out that there's probably, I've noticed a changing sentiment. A week ago, and I'll tell you that it's because Mason Smith was announced LSU's superstar defensive tackle is suspended for this game by the NCAA, and I've noticed a change in sentiment, especially the national media, in terms of their predictions. They seem to be slanting a little bit more towards Florida State, and I think that's evidenced by the Associated Press's 28-24.
One guy can't make that much of a difference.
I'm not saying it makes sense. I'm saying that's what's happening, right? So the Associated Press is buying into that apparently. I don't know who specifically on the Associated Press makes that prediction, but I mean, I've heard a number of predictions that, like I said, 2 weeks ago were favoring LSU. Now they're favoring Florida State. Weird.
28-24. You have something a little bit different and much different game.
Well, I've got some key matchups in mind, so I don't want to just blurt out what my prediction is. I want to talk about why I'm predicting what I'm predicting, and so that it makes a little sense. Brian Kelly talked earlier this week, and I agree with him, that Florida State is an elite football team, just like LSU is an elite football team. Florida State and LSU kind of mirror each other. You can look at Jared Verse, their outstanding defensive end. He's a pass rushing monster, sack monster. They have a strong defensive line. LSU has a strong defensive line. Of course, LSU has Harold Perkins. That's a good matchup, mirror matchup with Jared Verse. Florida State has a tough defensive line. LSU has a tough defensive line. LSU has tough linebackers. Florida State supposedly has tough linebackers. Jaden Daniels is a fifth-year returning quarterback that has a lot of expectations on him. Same for Jordan Travis. They didn't expect him to return this year. And initially, he did return. And as Kelly said earlier, he is a proven winner and a strong competitor. So I would characterize Jaden Daniels as the same way. Why then would you take two teams that match up well on a quote-unquote neutral field and predict the fifth-ranked team in the country, LSU, to beat Florida State? I think what people are overlooking is the fact that LSU has continuity, experience, and depth at all the positions that we've talked about, with the possible exception of cornerback, and we'll address that in a minute. LSU has the advantage. Florida State's got a lot of new players. They do have several returning starters, but they have a lot of new players that they've had to work into their lineup. For instance, their receiving core, which everybody is supposed to be so scared of because Jordan Travis can throw to 6'7" Johnny Wilson all day long. That's their only returning starter at receiver. Now, they do have two Louisiana receivers that are joining them, but this is their first real appearance as Seminoles. So there's going to be some adjustment there. Everybody talks about LSU's offensive line and how strong it is, and it is. They're going into this game 7 or 8 deep with Emory Jones and Will Campbell at tackles, locking it down. They've got basically 4 out of their 5 returning starters, and like I said, they're 7 deep. But how are they going to neutralize Jared Verse in the pass rush? I think that's a key matchup. Well, I think the key to that is they're going to be able to stop that, and you're not going to be able to contain Jaden Daniels. Excuse me. They weren't able to do that last year.
How many sacks do you think? Do you think they're going to be able to?
I'm not going to predict any sacks because I don't see Jaden Daniels getting sacked hardly ever. Number one, LSU's offensive line is much stronger than it was last year. Kelly's talked about that all camp. Now, I'm not saying they're not going to make some mistakes. It's the first game, so there will be some natural lapses. But LSU has a solid offensive line. LSU has depth at offensive line. Jaden Daniels is not easy to sack if you have a straight shot at him, and I don't anticipate Florida State having many straight shots at him. So I think, bottom line, LSU's offensive line neutralizes that defensive line and that pass rush. Advantage LSU. We've already talked about the experience and depth that LSU has advantage-wise, not to mention the continuity advantage LSU has over Florida State, having to integrate all these new players into the offense as well as the defense, including a number of transfers. Advantage LSU. LSU has some of the best receivers that have experience, and we're talking about Malik Neighbors, we're talking about Brian Thomas, we're talking about Kyron Lacey, we're talking about an inexperienced receiver in Aaron Anderson, and I'm talking about Aaron Anderson as a receiver right now.
Doesn't even account for him as on the rest of the field.
That's correct, and so I think he's going to play a significant role in special teams as the punt returner and the number one kickoff returner.
That was a big issue for them last year.
I don't think you're going to see LSU commit any turnovers on special teams, on punt returns. They muffed 2 punts last year. I don't think that's going to happen this game. I also think that, speaking of muffed punts and turnovers, if LSU wins the turnover battle, which that's one of the main reasons why Sage Ryan is likely to get a lot of reps, if not the start at cornerback, because he tackles the ball. He's one of LSU's best tacklers. And Kelly has also talked about how there's been a renewed emphasis on Harold Perkins stripping the ball, Omar Spate stripping the ball. LSU's going for turnovers. Final point. This is a physical LSU team, unlike what Florida State or anybody else saw last year. They are going to run the ball down your throat and be able to control the game. I do not believe, even though Florida State has a strong running game with Trey Benson, probably the number one rated potential NFL draftee at running back going into the season, as well as an offensive line that Florida State has that is over 214 or right at 214 combined starts compared to LSU 65. So you look at that and you go, well, Florida State's clearly got the advantage there. On Florida State's depth chart, they don't even name starters at left tackle and right tackle. They have shared co-starters. They also have some other people coming in. Now, those are all intangible, foo-foo things. But, again, we're back to continuity. Is LSU's continuity more than Florida State's? Yes. Is LSU going to be able to run the ball? Yes. Is LSU strong on the defensive front line and the defensive linebackers? So basically what amounts to your defensive front seven? Yes. I think LSU neutralizes the run. I think LSU puts pressure on Jordan Travis. And I think Zy Alexander, 6'2" cornerback, playing his first game as an LSU Tiger, will help significantly to neutralize Johnny Wilson.
So based off of everything that you said, all the matchups that we're seeing for this game, what's your prediction for this?
So what did the Associated Press predict? 28-24 Florida State. All right, keep in mind, Pierson, that in an average college football game, just an average college football game, each team will possess the ball about 12 times, okay? When you're playing with an explosive offense, which I think LSU and Florida State will both be playing with, it's going to be a much quicker game, much more abbreviated possessions, quick strikes occasionally.
Like a game of Madden at this point, everyone's going to be getting the ball.
Yeah, almost. So you're looking at a situation where one team could have as many as 15 or 16, maybe even 17 possessions for the whole game. I think LSU, for the reasons I outlined, is going to score 6 touchdowns.
6?
Yeah, I think they're going to have more than 12 possessions during the whole game. I think they're not going to have any turnovers. I know that's a strong prediction, but I think that lends itself to the continuity, the experience, and the preparation that this team has made. Like Kelly said, they got to go out and execute. But I think they're going to be strong in the details. They're going to be strong in the areas that I've outlined. And I think they're going to score 6 TDs with more than 12 possessions for the game. I think they're going to get 2 field goals. I think Damian Ramos is going to be good for 2 field goals. I don't think, like I've already said, that LSU is going to turn the ball over. But I think they're going to get at least 2 turnovers from Florida State. My prediction is LSU 48.
48.
Florida State 27.
That's a bold claim. That's a lot of points on the board, and a lot of people will surely get their hands on the ball if that's how high the score is. So you heard it here first. That is Todd Horne's prediction. And so we're going to take a quick break real quick, and here's a word from Pawpaw's Campers and Cars.
People come from
Papa's Campers and Cities. Papa's Campers and Cars of people. And we're going to let it go for I forgot. Take the whole family over to Picayune. We got something for you. All right. What else we going to say? PawPawsNicePrice.com. That's probably all we need to say.
That will do it from us from the Tiger Rag Audibles podcast. Before we go, I have a prediction for you guys, and I'm thinking 34 for LSU, and Florida State has 20. I think both teams will be able to spread the ball around a lot, but a little less scoring than what Todd said because potentially some sloppiness. The first teams, both teams' first game, and then so they're just going to be trying to feel out everything. But I think both teams will get it going. But at the end of the day, LSU will get more points. But we'll see. Who knows? The game is on Sunday, so make sure to stay tuned. If you can't wait to hear more of what Brian Kelly had to say from just this podcast, Brian Kelly's radio show debuts on Thursday at TJ Ribs, and Tiger Rag's own William Weathers wrote on our website. If you want to check out that, you can go to tigerrag.com. That's going to do it from us on the show, and thank you for all of our guests and all of our listeners for tuning in once again. We're getting closer to the start of Week 1 with LSU playing on Sunday, so stay tuned for more.